Hey y'all, I wanted to uh, make a little video, me playing on the Xbox 360 Minecraft. Uh, I had this idea, I would really like to start doing like little videos on tidbits of philosophy and whatnot, uh, with me kind of like playing the old Xbox 360 Minecraft in the background. I'm choosing to do that because, like, for me personally, the 360 Minecraft is very nostalgic for me. It's very relaxing. So, um, as I'm talking about stuff like, I wanted to talk about Diogenes, and I figured that might kind of be fitting. Um, the things that I want to talk about with Diogenes are pretty much just all the random things that he would say. He was, a very interesting guy. He lived in a barrel. He, would constantly, like, the best way I can put it is aura farm. Like, he would, for instance, he went down uh, this place where people would trade in Greece. I can't remember what it's called. And he had a lamp, and he said something like, "I cannot find even one honest man." He was very eccentric, is the best way that I can put it. He was not somebody to um, be polite, also. The first quote, I guess, that I can share, that I wanted to share, was he was talking to Alexander the Great, right? One of the biggest, like, uh, military people of his time. And he's going through this, like, pile of bones, which, number one, is odd enough as it is. And he tells Alexander the Great, "I cannot distinguish the bones of a slave from those of your father." Like, he was wilding, um, but he also, in many respects, had a very interesting philosophy as far as life goes. Um, a lot of the sayings that he has are questionable at best, because a lot of them are like a little too good to be true. So, take everything that you hear that I say with a grain of salt, because it's not like outright like he did or did not say that. Um, even that what I just said might just be like an exaggeration of him. I don't know, teaching Alexander the Great humility or something. I don't know. Uh, but the most like interesting quote from him, I think, is when he first met Alexander the Great. He ended up saying to him in response to Alexander the Great asking, like, "Hey, I'm the most powerful man on the planet right now. You know, you can ask me for literally anything, and I can just give it to you." And he says, "Okay, I need you to move out of the way. You're blocking my son." Like, that is such a interesting thing to say to someone who has, like, the ability to give you anything you've ever wanted, and genuinely you're just so, like, satisfied with your life that you were fine just saying, "No, just if you could, like, move out of the way a little bit. I am getting some sun right now." That's really cool to me. After that, Alexander the Great uh, tells him, "If I were not Alexander the Great, I would wish to be Diogenes." And then Diogenes replies, "If I were not Diogenes, I too would want to be Diogenes." And that was very typical of the school of philosophy that he came from. He was a cynic, which today means kind of someone who is cynical, who questions if people have truly good intentions when it comes to the actions that they make. But cynic back then came from the term, I think it's Kanekoi, which means dog-like. They sought to live in this very like natural, um, almost hippie-ish way is the best way that I can put it. Um, it was something that emphasized that the things that you do are the things that are going to bring you happiness and bring you to a state of equilibrium and whatnot. That's the really important thing, and the way to do that is to live a very natural, chill life where, you don't really care about power, you don't really care about fame, you don't really care about wealth outside of, what you need to live and live comfortably. Uh, and I really dig that philosophy because, I think that life is better lived, uh, you know, really free from like unnecessary desire. Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have hobbies. I mean, it's unnecessary for me to play this game right now, but I also think that um, real freedom lies within being content. If I'm being honest, but that's a whole different thing. Uh, what other quotes are there that he has? I had some in mind beforehand, and I thought I was going to remember them, but I actually kind of don't. Um, but yeah, it's just a really interesting kind of life that he lived. Uh, he at one point was also asked, you know, what is your goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve here? Which is a very good question to ask someone like him, someone who lives in a damn barrel. And he responded by saying to deface the currency. Um, that's one of those things where, like, unless you know what he's talking about, like, you understand the language that's there, you're not really going to understand what he's actually trying to say. And in essence,
Shoot. Sorry, my controller is old, so it drifts sometimes. Uh,
but he responded with, my goal is to deface the currency. And what he meant by that is essentially something along the lines of to challenge the kind of unnecessary social rules and customs of Greece at that time. He thought that a lot of that stuff was unnecessary, and that, if you truly wanted to live a good life, then it was just within your power to, live simply and, do stuff like living in a barrel, I guess. Um, that being said, he's not necessarily the most uncontroversial philosopher. Um, he was known for his very, uh, honestly, disrespectful habits. He was very flamboyant about his lifestyle. Um, but did, he's still, someone that you can learn a lot from. For instance, a lot of the early church was influenced by his philosophy. Well, maybe not necessarily his philosophy specifically, but the cynics' philosophy of, simplicity and de-emphasizing worldly pursuits and desires and whatnot. Um, for instance, the Franciscans, a branch of uh, Catholic monks, kind of, that date back to the I think 12th century, largely uh, practice a philosophy that's very similar to what someone like Diogenes would preach.
um,
You can really see that whole philosophy of nothing outside of the necessities to live is really important in like so many movements. Really, you can see that in even the modern day when people are like uh, emphasizing like minimalism and simplicity. You can see that in uh, even some people argue that Jesus' teachings are remarkably cynic. They're remarkably, kind of in that quinquoi category, in the sense that, for instance, in Matthew 6, he emphasizes that, you should serve God, not wealth. And he goes on to, explain that by prioritizing God, then, that is what you need to be happy and even provide for yourself. Um, so it's a very interesting kind of idea. Um, I'm trying to learn a little bit more about it. I've been familiar with Diogenes specifically, but I haven't familiarized myself enough with the Cynics to really make anything more than like a little quick TikTok or YouTube video about it. Um, but that being said, I'm doing a little bit of reading on them. Uh, I honestly am kind of considering maybe getting a copy of like the sayings of Diogenes, or even just some philosophy book that talks about the lives that they led. But that's about all I want to talk about. All right. See ya.